Welcome to another episode of the Lone Recruiter Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Clemenson. If you're a recruiter out on your own or just lacking general guidance or mentorship, you've come to the right place. Our episodes are designed to give you the motivation, the strategies, and the support you need to become the very best lone recruiter. So join us, grab a cup of coffee, and take your desk to another level. Now today, we are joined by the handsome Josh. And he's handsome because he's wearing one of my hats today.
That's exactly it. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
For anyone at home who doesn't know Josh, he has quite a remarkable history, I'm learning. And 11 years in recruitment, I'm going to bastardize it if I try to explain what it is. But I'm going to give you 60 seconds. Tell us what you do, how you've done it, what got you into recruitment, what you've done. Let's go.
60-second elevator pitch. I think like everybody, I fell into recruitment. It actually runs in the family. My mum was a recruiter, so...
I wanted to be a recruiter when I was growing up.
Makes one of us. To be honest, it was one of those things. I was in banking and finance at the time, went to see a recruiter, and he went, "You could probably do this job." I said, okay, yeah, no worries. Gave it a go, and like everybody, I think once you get on that roller coaster, it's really hard to get out of it. I started at Hayes for my sins, and then made the cardinal mistake, without any disrespect to anybody in that business, of going to Michael Page. You don't cross the divide very often. It's a bit like the Liverpool-Man United rivalry.
Right.
And then from there, smaller growing businesses, all startups, all early stage desks, tech for 11 of those years, one in oil and gas, which is a fascinating industry to be in, but really hard to slog, I think, in any market, but particularly that time. Built Perth's best now tech recruitment business as awarded by Sourcer last year, and now with the network here for coming up to nearly 5 years. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
I think we're getting some wisdom today. So let's jump into it. Today, we're on our quest to interview 100 recruiters. I don't even know what we're up to at the moment, but we're getting through them. And we're seeing some good answers. So I've got 5 questions for you today. The first one I have for you is, if you had to have one KPI, or if you could only have one KPI, and I never know if someone's in an environment of like, we love KPIs, and I'm guessing you are because you're from Hayes and Michael Page. But if you could only have one to measure the success of your desk, or to measure your day-to-day success, what is that KPI?
I'm the anti-KPI guy. Like, I think those times probably taught me that KPIs for KPI's sake are wonderful things. I am absolutely a fan of quality over quantity. For me, that is all that matters in our industry. Now, to answer the question, I think, and I'm going to take a little liberty because I've heard a few other people do it. I'm going to answer it two-pronged. One, I think you need to be across both ends of your recruitment pipeline. Now, by that I mean what you're doing with your clients and how you're bringing them in. Meetings. For me, you need to be in front of people. If you're not sitting down and having this type of conversation, you're not doing the job properly. That's where the magic is. That's how you get to build the outcomes. And then where things are at when it comes to final stages and interviews, so that you know your dollar at the end. Those two things, if you take care of everything in those two areas, the rest is actually pretty easy. It takes care of itself if you do the job, even to a basic standard.
So you're basically saying, if you get in the room with a client, you know the work's going to come.
If you do it well.
And if you're at the end, and when you say the end, you're talking about at the closing stage?
The closing part, and making sure you're doing that part well. So as long as you're tracking every step naturally without maybe the same rigor. But if I was to sit and look at a desk from a bird's eye view and someone said, hey, what is this person doing well or doing poorly? And they gave me no other metrics, I would look at how many meetings they're doing every week, and then how many interviews they're getting, or final stage interviews they're getting. For me, if that answer, that would give me the indication of where I need to look at, that might be breaking down if those two things are working.
That makes sense. So just going a little deeper on that, how many meetings a week would you like to see? If you were on yourself, just a senior recruiter, you had no other managerial expectations, whatever, you were just a biller, how many meetings a week?
I would like to say that I do 1 a day, but the reality of that is that I think realistically 4 is a pretty achievable kind of goal. I actually have times now where I just go to one location and say, hey, I'm in the area, I'll try to get 3 or 4 in a day.
Yeah, sure.
My whole approach to recruitment is hyper organised now, because increasingly I have less and less time. I have a day planner and all this level of fastidiousness that's always kind of been very positive for me. So I think that if you have those metrics and you're seeing that many people, as long as you're not in there just for the sake of it, and you know the person you're meeting, there's some value to be had on both sides, it will come.
Well, typically a meeting happens because they've got something they need to do.
Correct.
So that hurdle's already jumped.
You would hope so.
You would hope so. Okay, cool. That was a great answer. 2, if you could only, for whatever reason, you've run out of time, you've only got 3 interview questions to ask the candidate. like, what are the three main ones you need to run off and go, I can make this happen, or I can at least get this thing started?
Yeah, I love this question. This is the one that I was thinking about on the drive up here. I was thinking, how am I going to answer the 3 interview question rule? And when I kind of broke it down in my own head, I think that I purposely can be quite vague. And by that, I mean, I'll ask questions that I don't give further clarification to. So for instance, tell me about yourself. It gives me a lot of insight into who you are by the way you answer that question.
That's true.
I had someone yesterday, I asked that question to in technology leadership, and they started telling me about the fact they do archery on the weekend and stuff like that. Awesome. That's where your priorities lie. I understand a bit about who you are as a person. But my next follow-up question is always, okay, but what about work?
Yeah.
I want to know about career ambitions. And then I'm going to ask why. And lastly, I know I've just kind of 2.5 there, but lastly, it's always the fundamentals of recruitment. How much do you want? What's the notice period? All these kinds of things.
3 interview questions with part A's and part B's in between. You can't help yourself.
I'm sorry. But yeah, the recruitment fundamentals, one question, just, hey, is it aligned? Who are you and why?
Yeah. Do you interview people, like, are you predominantly headhunting environment?
Bit of both.
You know what the brief is, or have you gone, nah, I know my market, I know that you're good talent for my client base, don't know where the jobs are? A bit of both?
I think in my market at the moment, it's people and advertising roles. I advertised one recently for a head of technology. I had 400 and something odd applicants. My phone has been blowing up the whole time I've been here.
Wow.
That's a really different market to the kind of middle market that you're seeing. What that means is that when you get really good people, and I don't have capacity to take more than, say, 5 on at a time, I go and take those people to market, but then also I'm out there trying to win briefs and retained assignments to then do the other side of that. I try to avoid that kind of contingent space as much as possible in this day and age. I like being paid before I do anything. I think it's a mutual benefit. But good people will always open doors, and having good people and good relationships on both sides of your recruitment fence is the key to success, in my opinion.
I agree. Okay, wonderful. Let's just say you get to the end of a process and the offer comes in. What's your closing sequence, or how do you close a candidate? Do you have a favourite closing line?
I do, and it's, again, I'm sorry, I'm not letting you run the format, but for me, ABC, always be closing, right? Your closing should begin from the minute you have that first conversation.
Yes.
If you've only got 3 interview questions, maybe I'll go back and answer that differently. Maybe you should ask about the kind of counter offer and everything there. For me, if that person is in that final stage of interview and I'm not 100%, 98% sure that they're going to take that role, they're not going forward. I am having that discussion around making sure everything is locked down before I get to that. Why? Because it's important that I save face with my client, but also that the candidate isn't there being messed around either. Time is our most precious commodity. So the closing line is always, the last one is always, hey, congratulations, it's done. That's it. Because I've already known, yes, you're happy with it, we've moved through that process. My processes are also quite long, so it's not like a day and a half turnaround. Hey, look, we spoke yesterday, here's an offer. It's a case of, all right, we've negotiated a bit here and there, this is how we go about things. Everything we wanted done, you happy? Cool.
And you mentioned you do a lot of C-suite or executive roles. And I find when I go that level, I way prefer playing there. And it's not because everyone says, because the fees are better. Yeah, they are way better. But that I actually genuinely think people at that level are way more considered. They know what they want, and more importantly, they know what they don't want. And I find that it is way easier to have that conversation halfway through and going, we're going down a path. Are we on the right track here?
Yeah. The level of professionalism is miles different. And the more senior you get, I've done a couple of CEO assignments recently, those are pleasures to deal with because everybody in there knows what you're in for. They've invested a lot of time. They're busy human beings to go through a process. So none of them are going to waste that. And you'll have maybe 100 pre-screen calls or more when people come in and say, hey, look, what about this role? And they'll just cut it off halfway through. And it's refreshing. It's like, okay, well, look, you know that this isn't right. Anybody that's going through that process, you've done all the due diligence, you've got all the information, they know. Excuse me. They know about everything already. So there's none of that kind of, maybe, yes, no, I'm not sure. They know before they even start the process.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, wonderful. We're smashing the time here. Okay, counteroffer. We all love a counteroffer. Let's just say you have this dream process and this person, we get all the confidence in the world and we've just sung the praises of these C-suites, but I'm sure you still get counteroffers.
Of course.
How do you handle them?
They're a reality, right?
Yes, they have to be.
They have to be, and I think that we'd all be hypocrites to say that we haven't probably thought about them at times in the career and stuff like that. I think that the reality is that you can only be so prepared. And I know from my earlier time in my career when I was working at engineering roles and things like that, you run out that kind of tired line, 80% of people give it. That's not going to work. The reality is that if that person has accepted that counteroffer, it's already too late.
Yeah.
You should be dealing with that much the same as you are with the closing from the minute you get in that conversation. I'm actually always, in my conversations, really upfront. You're going to get a counteroffer. The upside there is if they don't, they're like, oh, well, I made the right choice to leave. And if they do, of course, like, you're amazing. Why would you not get one?
Yeah.
And if you're dealing with that from day one, it's a difficult conversation that we as recruiters don't like to have. But that minute of investment early on is orders of magnitude more efficient than trying to save something that's already down the line.
And I actually stuffed this up myself the other week. I did not prep a candidate for counter. And it was because the sequencing, I think it was a very busy period where we made a lot of placements and we had a lot going on. And this is one, I just thought, she had every reason to leave.
Yeah.
Right, and you go, that's an easy one, whatever. The contract was coming and I just said, sit tight. Contract's coming. Once that contract's done, we've signed it, because they'd verbally accepted, that sounds good, I'm happy with that. I said, once we've signed it, we'll go through all the counter-offer stuff.
Yeah.
I'll give you a resignation letter, template, things like that. She jumped the gun. So I missed it by a few days. It was always planned to do it, but sometimes people do dumb stuff too. They go, well, I know the offer's coming, I'm just going to have a quick chat with my boss. And then you haven't prepped them. They go, I've got a counter-offer, and I feel flattered. And I was like, it was one of those ones where I'm like, oh man, I could have prevented this entire...
They're the worst.
They're the worst.
They're the worst.
They're the worst.
The thing about our industry is, you're not selling something that is physical. It's a person that has thoughts, feelings, emotions, does irrational things, which is the beauty of our industry, but also the challenge. And there's something about it, it's Sod's Law, Murphy's Law, whatever the saying is that the one that you don't is the one that bites you. And it's always, I still get it every now and again now, and I look back and I've got to the point of not being angry about it. I laugh and then go, well, this is what I get for being so naive.
That's it. I love how jaded older recruiters get. It's about the 10-year mark. Like, I've seen it all. All right, last one. I don't pick you as someone who gets in the slump often, but we all hit something. We either get burnout or we hit a bad patch or whatever. But what do you do? Like, what is your sequence to get yourself out and when you recognise that you're in a slump?
I'm honoured that you don't think that that's the case. I probably have it once a year, and I think that as a leader, increasingly I've got really good at seeing it, not only in myself but also in the team. There's telltale signs. I think COVID's been really good for that because it helps you. Certainly in our business, we did a lot of work around burnout, and I didn't even really think about it as a concept. We were always taught in recruitment, just keep swimming, for want of a better word. Keep dialing, keep doing the work, and it will work itself out. You have a holiday, eventually everything's fine. The positive of that is that that's not the case anymore. For me, when I'm at my best is when I'm perfectly balanced. That is, I'm up early, I'm going to the gym, I'm eating well, I'm really focused on my outcomes day to day. And the benefit of my role is that because I've got a longer sales cycle, it's not as maybe time
sensitive.
Yeah, but also reactive, I think, is probably the way to put it, right? You're not kind of like, I need to get something in 3 hours. I do have clients that have that space still, but it allows me a bit more time to be focused on the end goal. For me, if I'm not organised, and it happens sometimes when things happen or you have meetings or what have you, and it's like, oh, where's the day gone? Your headspace is gone. So I think being aware of what your trigger is and being aware of what you're good at and what you're not good at, and putting ways not to mitigate, but to get around these issues. Because you're not going to avoid it. Everyone's going to have a slump. This job will teach you every time that you are just human. Yeah. And being aware of that and accepting it, and cynical maybe is the right way of putting it, as you said before, is the best way to avoid having those slumps. When you're in them, take time, stop, recalibrate. I've said to members of my team before, look, you're not in a good place. Have the afternoon off. Don't look at your emails.
Yeah.
That's the only condition. Have the afternoon, take the day, you're burnt out, think about it, and every single time it's happened, they've come back and gone, yeah, that made a big difference.
Yeah, I love it. I'm 100% on board with that, and I think that I did a podcast the other day about this too, like, because of, I think really since COVID, that world of work and working from home, it's just like two worlds do collide. So people are actually working harder and longer.
Really?
Like, they're like, oh, I get more done because I'm not commuting. But then they're also pushing the boundary of like, oh, I'll be dinner in 15 minutes. Like, I actually think people are working harder or they're working longer and not as not as efficiently.
Definitely.
Either way, it's creating this friction, right?
Big time.
Anyway, I find it fascinating. That's 5 questions. I'm going to wrap this one up. 15 minutes, that's a long one. That was great. Thank you very much for jumping on.
Pleasure. Really appreciate it.
That's all we have time for you today, as always. If you got something out of this episode, which I'm sure you did, like us, 5 stars, share us, go and connect with Josh. It helps us all grow. We really appreciate it. Have an amazing day. And as always, make all your deals come true.
Yeah.